Hey. All right, so I am now on the line with a Miss Lara Tabet, and Mr. Jason Potell. Lara, you are one of the founders of Safer Dance Space, and Jason, you are one of the members. Is that proper?
That's correct.
All right, so Safer Dance Space is, I guess, an organization, a group whose initiative is to make our dance spaces safer and braver globally. You all want to address some issues that you've noticed with sexual harassment in the dance community. Safer Dance Space consists of voluntary teachers and organizers who have come together to make a difference in the partner dance communities. You all created this community, this organization back in July of 2021. Is that proper?
Yes.
This was our launch date, yeah, but we had been working on it in the background for a while before that. But yeah, we launched on the 19th of July. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Ms. Lara. I may not have done that intro the proper justice it deserves. So could you please, first off, talk to me about your goals, your ambitions for Safer Dance Space, please.
Of course. So I guess a bit of an intro about myself in the first instance. So as you said, Terence, my name is Lara Tabet. I'm based in London in the UK. And I'm a social dancer. I have been for about a decade now, both in the salsa, kizomba, bachata community. So I don't personally teach dance or organize dance events, but I've been in this scene for a while. And I'm also one of the board members for Climb Against Sexual Abuse, which is an NGO, a global NGO. We're actually registered in the States, and who, as it says on the tin, effectively looks at fighting sexual abuse. So I guess a few years back, I sort of joined these two words of dance and fighting against sexual abuse by starting a bit of an initiative, I guess that it's called, or it was more of a campaign called Zero Tolerance, where I was just bringing to the surface this discussion about sexual abuse that does happen in the dance scene as well as it happens everywhere else, really. And effectively, opening a call to others saying, what can we do? Back then, I had set up a few guidelines that were effectively just ideas and advice that organizers and teachers could take on board to create a safer dance space within their events or within their dance schools. And Safer Dance Spaces is effectively an initiative that did just that. So it started at the back of a Facebook Live following one scandal of sexual abuse in the Kizomba scene, and there was a discussion among some organizers and teachers, effectively saying, at the end of which they said, this was just another discussion on this topic. There have been quite a few, particularly over lockdown, and we want this time to actually have some action following that. So this group of people got in touch with me, and we started all working together as a steering group to effectively implement these guidelines, which are, for example, to have a reporting system in place when it comes to sexual abuse, to have a code of conduct that is clear for any artists or anybody who signs up effectively to an event or to a dance school, to have rules of engagements for all of the members quite clear, to have this mentioned by the MCs or by the teachers as an important point and an important mission of the event and the dance school, etc. So what we've done really is to compile a bank of material that is extremely useful and that has been reviewed professionally by the right people, lawyers who do that for a living, for example, for the code of conduct. And then we're effectively wanting to make this bank of material available to all. But before we do, we also want to make sure that the people who get involved in Safer Dance Spaces actually are on the same wavelength when it comes to sexual abuse, because it's a difficult topic, as you might, as everybody will agree, and making sure that we agree on the definitions, that we sort of agree on a mission, that we know where we all stand, and that it's not just talk, it's also action. It's one thing to talk the talk, it's another thing to walk the walk. And we want to make sure that as SDS members, people will do both. So SDS is really an enabler, in short.
Okay, I definitely understand that. That's quite the, I guess, the task you have to take upon yourself. I guess let me ask you this real quick, Mr. Jason. I don't know much about your background, but I'm very curious. What led you to Safer Dance Space? How did you get involved with this?
Sure. So I can give you a little bit about my background as well. So I was a professional dancer for about 15 years. So I've done it for fun for much of my life. So my family is Mexican, so I grew up listening to like salsa, cha-cha, merengue music. And over the course of my life, I kept doing it more and more, got really good, eventually started getting hired to teach and perform. Started my own small events company focused on the Latin dance arts and related events, and eventually became one of the scene leaders in the Washington, D.C. area where I was living at the time. And one of the issues that you come across very quickly once you've become an organizer at any level in the dance scene is that sexual harassment is a major issue. And one of the bigger issues in this area is that it's not something that has a clear organizing body. It's not something that has a clear progression system for when something happens, to how you address it, to who's responsible for it, or how anything gets done. And so, like Lara said, there's a lot of conversations that happen around this saying, this incident happened, but then what do we do about it? And a lot of times it's just people in a room talking about it. And then the survivors of the incidents feel really frustrated because there's no recourse being taken. So at a lot of different levels, I was involved in different groups trying to take small steps. But one of the difficulties with the social dance scene is that we are a global community. People cross state lines, people cross country lines, and it's really difficult to maintain a sense of order across such diverse communities, language barriers as well. And so organizers in the scene really need to come together and work together to make sure that we're all adhering to the same standards, we have the same expectations. All of our dancers know what to expect, know who to talk to, know how to talk to. And so it's really important to have groups like this who are willing to say, we will take on that, that organizing burden of figuring out how do we make the world of dance a safe place.
Okay. So I'll be honest with you. When I first got messaged by one of your members, I was a little like, I guess maybe naive or ignorant. I've been dancing for the past 10 years and I'm from Virginia. And this honestly, this isn't something I've actually ever had to deal with, meaning, I guess I knew it was there, but I've never been to a social and just had or heard personal stories of people I've danced with who had to go through this. So I gotta ask, and I'm very curious, is this a widely known ongoing issue that is definitely going on, or?
I can go first, Jason, and then I guess you can complete. So sexual abuse happens everywhere. It's not something that is specific to the dancing. It happens absolutely everywhere. And what you hear about and what you know about is always the tip of the iceberg when it comes to that. The reason for this is that there isn't people unfortunately don't have the same definition and understanding of what is sexual abuse. So people sometimes actually struggle to identify it. Even when it happens to them, they can feel discomfort, they can feel shame, they can feel out of place, but they can't really put their finger on the fact that what just happened wasn't their fault and was actually sexual abuse. So this is part of the problem. Now, does it happen often in the dance scene? I mean, I don't want to get into does it happen more often in the dance scene than it happens outside of the dance scene, but I would go into explaining how and in which circumstances it can very much happen in the dance scene. So in the first instance, you will find some people, particularly when it comes to partner dance, using the fact that this is, partner dance is a physical activity between two people who will be in close proximity of each other, very much voluntarily, because they're there to dance together. And some people will use this as an excuse to not understand the line. And this has happened, I would say, a lot. Personally, I've had this happen to me. I've every single one of my friends, definitely girlfriends, will have an example to give you where something has happened to them, sometimes on the dance floor, sometimes just off the dance floor, sometimes getting a drink, sometimes in the lift of the venue, whatever. And, it does happen. And a lot of the time you won't even hear of it. I remember a time where I was at a very big festival, and I got talking to a woman who was there for her first festival. It was her first festival abroad. She was, I think, mainly dancing one of the styles back then. And she had just got into dancing another style during the festival, doing workshops and dancing it, socially. And we just started talking, and she asked me, she said to me, do you mind if I ask you a question that may feel a bit uncomfortable, but it seems like we're just, we're having deep conversations anyway. And I said, of course, go on. And she said, so during the social last night, I had a guy effectively pressing his erection against me for quite a while during the dance. And I sort of did not really know how to react. Is that normal? Is that something that just happens because the dance is close? And obviously I was like, no. I mean, in what world is that normal? So this is just to say that this just happened. It wasn't even called out because she just didn't know how to call it out. And it would have just gone and continued. So just because people don't hear about it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And this is just, I'm going to say a small thing. It's not really a small thing, but this is, let's say, on the spectrum. And you will have things happening all over the spectrum to varying degrees. And we're here to call all of these things out, because ultimately what happens is that even if you don't label it as sexual abuse, if you consistently get these uncomfortable situations, you'll end up leaving the scene, and you leave the scene to whoever is left, which are the people who are doing this stuff, when actually that's not what dancing is about. It's about connection. It's about sharing, this energy. It's about sharing this connection to the music and to each other. You're supposed to both be very much into the dance and enjoying it. Neither party is supposed to be feeling uncomfortable because somebody else is using this for other ends. And then, if I may add a last example that applies outside of the dancing, but definitely within it as well, is when it comes to power dynamics of, that some teachers, of course not all teachers, but some bad apples would actually use the fact that they're in a teacher's position or in a whatever position of power to effectively groom others into a certain way, using private lessons and I'll make you my partner and I'll get you on stage, and these things as a coercion to actually get something else. And this also very much happens. And this is sexual abuse. Coercion is not okay either. So, but then again, it's not that happens everywhere too.
Let me ask you this. So I'm curious, in today's age of social media, where, everyone is able to voice their opinion, share their opinion. I don't know how to say this, but is this a problem that self-solves, that self-resolves the second that someone is labeled a creep or a sexual harasser, and this person is able to put this person on blast on social media? Is this person not labeled and therefore shamed? Is that what you hope to resolve with your reporting mechanism, where people can just report this individual and you push this out to all of your partners around the globe?
So that SDS is not playing judge and jury globally, but the reporting mechanism is more about ensuring that each event has something in place where if something happens, there is a route to getting to the right place to report what happens. Because particularly in big events, something may happen to you and you don't even know where to go. You don't even know who's the organizer, where is the organizer among these thousands of people, and is this organizer actually the person where you report this? Because when it is something, if it is a case of quite bad sexual abuse, it's not about just finding some rando and just discussing this in the middle of the dance floor, And this is one of the things that we try to communicate in our training, is that when it comes to these things, they need to be picked up in a specific way. Safe environments need to be set up in order to have these discussions. You can't have these discussions on the dance floor. You can't have these discussions with somebody who's trying to understand why the sound is not exactly, the speaker is not working properly in the other room. This is what we mean by a reporting mechanism, to make organizers understand that they need to put a specific route for these specific things clear, so that people know what route to follow, so that they are heard in a safe space. In terms of putting names publicly out there on social media, this is very much not what we are about. And this is actually something that we also explain in our training, in terms of what to do and what not to do in that space. Because, we live in a world where, of course, cancel culture may work in some cases, but that isn't, this is not, we're not witch hunting. We aren't trying to attract social arguments on social media, but hearsay. We are just wanting to make sure that, particularly when public allegations have been made, that our members are aware of them. Because, and Jason can respond to that, but one of the things that Jason, you said earlier, was that, we're a global scene. So you can have somebody having done absolutely horrific things in, I don't know, Singapore, and being very much known for these things, and therefore not welcome in Singaporean events, take a plane, set a new home in wherever, California, and start from scratch. And unfortunately, usually, particularly in severe cases, these are actually serial predators. So we would have heard of one allegation, on one part of the world, another allegation somewhere else, a third allegation somewhere else. And then you start thinking, how did this person manage to get away doing this pretty much everywhere? So when it comes to public allegations, we do make our members aware, but we don't go ahead picking up on anybody who said anything and starting a war on people.
So would you consider yourself more so, I guess maybe like a training facility and like an awareness program? And also a community. Mm-hmm. So we're basically trying to connect people around material and principles and definitions is what we do. So when you join us, you do the onboarding training. Jason, you can tell people whether you've learned anything on there. And then after that, you've just joined the community where you can share further thoughts, ask further questions. And then, of course, material gets updated whenever we think something needs to be done, and based on the feedback that we receive. So we're basically a community within a community who's trying to do good and to upscale and align with that with regards to sexual abuse. I definitely want to hear from you, Jason, but I got to ask, I'm curious, you mentioned this earlier. I'm curious, how do you prevent yourself from becoming, the judge and the juror? How do you stop yourself from doing that?
We just don't do it. So you will never see us as SDS saying, oh, Terence on social media, Terence has done that and they should be banned from. We just don't. And we are also clear in our training that we expect our members to not do that. If somebody gets to a point where they feel that they want to do that personally, they will not be speaking on behalf of SDS. So we have a members charter that people sign up to, where they need to agree to these things, because at the end of the day, this is very much a journey of education as much as anything else. There are some people who have had some borderline behavior in the past, who have then reached out to us to understand those borderline behavior and to understand how they can change and how they can, be better. And we've welcomed these people and have had these conversations. So we aren't about, anyway, you'll never see SDS going and putting a face or a name and saying, no. Of course, we will make some statements, but these will be made privately. So SDS members will say things like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be associated with this event because, it is not in line with our code of conduct. But this is something that you can do for any reason. You can decide not to be associated with an event because you think it's too expensive. You can decide because you think people are arrogant, because you think you don't like them. We are definitely not judge and jury, and we're not making public allegations. We're not in that business.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm very, I'd like to hear from both of you all on this. I guess I'm very curious. What do you think is the root cause of this? Do you think it's just people not understanding social boundaries? Socially awkward individuals, or is it really, an ill intent, a malicious intent that just happens to be brought up in a social dancing environment?
You should do our training, Terrence. No, I think it's both. Sometimes it's a lack of awareness, but there's definitely some malicious intent in some cases. I would say probably a lot of it comes from a place of ignorance or borderline, and then the other one is definitely malicious intent coupled with impunity. Basically, just keep on getting away with it. But I think Jason should have some views on this too. I've been talking too much.
Sure. So one thing I think that is really relevant here, going back to an earlier question you asked, like how prevalent is this? I think people don't realize that how common sexual assault and harassment is in society writ large. And the dance scene, I think it's even more common. So the last statistic I saw was something like 1 in 5 women will experience sexual assault in their life, and 1 in 70 men will experience sexual assaults. When it comes to harassment, over 80% of women say that they've been sexually harassed, and about 40% of men say they've experienced sexual harassment as well. And that's just in society writ large. I don't know that anyone's done a study on a scene like the social dance scene. I would expect those numbers would actually be higher in the social dance scene, because there is this sense of intimacy that is created when you spend a few minutes, often very close and often in a dark room with somebody, and there's this sense that this person better than you do, or this person might feel like they know you better than they do, which can, like Lara was saying, lead to a spectrum of issues. Some are honest misunderstandings, and some are actually malicious. So it really depends on the individual person, the incident, which is why it's so important to be able to respond to a wide range of issues. How do you respond to, I accidentally touched someone inappropriately during a spin, right? Or someone groped somebody, or somebody assaulted somebody, or a well-known teacher invited someone at a social up to their hotel room for a private lesson, which obviously wasn't that. It didn't turn out to be a private lesson. So there are ranges of experiences that happened, and it's important for people to know how to respond to all levels of those. That's why it's so important to have this education.
Okay, let me ask you this, Jason. So, I presume you've been to the training, yes?
Yes.
So talk to me about that. Talk to me like Laura's not here right now, man. Well, what was your opinion of the training session?
So the training is wonderful, and I strongly recommend for anyone in the social dance scene, whether you're a dancer, whether you're an organizer, a teacher at any level. So I've been involved in anti-sexual harassment activism for most of my life, dating back to my college days before I was even a dancer. And there's a sense of language, there's a sense of empathy, there's a sense of understanding, there's a sense of how do you have these conversations, right? One of the things that you talked about earlier about, can't you just put someone on blast on social media? There's a whole host of reasons you wouldn't do that. And one of the most basic ones is you have to be aware of the survivor's mental health and well-being. And to put that story out in public, they might not be ready for that, or they might not be able to handle reliving that every time that gets shared, gets reposted. So just developing this sense of how do you have these type of conversations? How do you share empathy with people? How do you tell these stories in a respectful, understanding way? These are not innate skills that people develop on their own, and you have to get some kind of training to be able to understand how do you have these conversations? What do you look for? What is your initial response when someone tells you they've been assaulted? And so just learning how to navigate those very difficult conversations, what language to use, what to look for is really important. And I don't care how empathetic you are, you're not going to get those skills on your own. You have to have someone walk you through, how does this work? What's the language you use, et cetera.
So tell me this then, I guess walk me, what is your process then? We'll come with this hypothetical situation. An event happens at a situation happens at a festival. Luckily, this person is able to find a trained SDS member. They report it. What is the follow-up? What happens after a report is made?
So I'll start and then I'll pass it to Lara on this one. So I actually just want to say first, if it gets to that point where someone has said something, you're already doing something right. Because there's so many scenes where something will happen and no one will say anything because they don't believe that anybody cares. So you can tell some scenes are safer than others because there's a general expectation among the community that if something happens, you can report it. You can go to an organizer. Right? There are other scenes where something may happen and someone was brushed off and say, "Oh, there's nothing I can do," because the scene has a reputation for hosting predators, or the scene has a reputation for people not caring. So just by the fact that someone has said something is hopefully a sign in the community that, okay, people trust that this community is a place where you can share and you can say something. So I just wanted to lead with that and pass the rest along.
I guess in terms of process and what actually happens, this is I'm gonna give the typical consultant response here. It depends. It depends what you are reporting, and it depends where you're at as well as a person. You can be in a position where, I don't know, are you reporting rape in some corner of the bathroom, and that you are completely traumatized but still want to raise this and go get checked in the hospital and raise this to the police? And is this the report that you're making to the organizer? Or are you reporting some, a person who has been groping various people that you have seen this, you have not experienced this, but you feel that they're making people feel uncomfortable, etc. And I think what happens after that is what happens after the report effectively depends on the report itself and the content of the report itself, and also depends on where the person making the report is at personally as well. So one of the things that we actually do during the training is we go through one scenario fully to effectively explain, in a scenario where a report has been made, where what has been reported is severe enough that you think that this person needs to actually not be at your event anymore, but where the person who has reported actually is not in a position where they want to go to the police yet. What are the steps that you go through in order to handle the situation properly for the victim and survivor, properly to protect your event as well, and also to protect yourself from defamation? So there's a lot at play at the same time, and what we can't do is actually go through every single scenario on the face of the earth and and discuss it. But what we can do is go through one example and pick out on what are the things that you need to look out for, what are the things that you need to be conscious about, which are the bits where you need to stop and think about whether to do A or B. And as I said before, SDS is an enabler. We aren't we aren't judge and jury. We aren't extremely prescriptive with regards to things. We can't have eyes everywhere. We're, a small group of volunteers. And what we're trying to effectively do is, as I said before, is upskill, enable, and connect people together so that there is some sort of consistency in the understanding and the treatment with regards to these things. But we can't be at every event. We can't ever have written down every single scenario on the face of the earth, because every single scenario is going to be different. So what we hope to do is to have a community of people who have done the training, who are comfortable asking questions, who are comfortable reaching out if they feel that they don't know what decision to make, and just support each other in that journey. Because none of this is, black and white, and none of this is the right way, go ahead. It's there's a lot to be taken into account in each scenario, and this is the message that we're trying to get across. What are the things that you need to take into account in every scenario to make sure that what you do next is the best thing that you can do at this point in time?
I definitely understand that. Let me ask you this. I'm very curious. Would you consider, is SDS a one-way street, meaning is Safer Dance Space, is that strictly a female advocacy group, or is it also concerned about the safety of all individuals?
It's definitely not a female advocate group at all. It's about creating a safer dance space for everybody. And we have, for example, our posters, we have one poster that shows a female getting harassed, another poster that shows a male getting harassed. So, the reality of the numbers is that, female get it more often. But another reality is that actually men find it even more difficult to raise, and even more difficult to say, I've been sexually harassed, because the expectation is, of course you want it, you always want it, you're a man, what's wrong with you? And this is one of the things that we actually touch on in the training as well, because all of this comes from the same place, which is rape culture. So one of the things that we touch about in the training is rape culture. What is it? What are the key phrases that sort of summarize rape culture? And therefore, what are the smaller things that you need to call out, because these are the things that evolve into bigger abuse. And if you call these things out early enough, basically you're preventing. So we're both about prevention and response, but it's definitely not just about female safety. Yes, the numbers are that usually it's more females. This is the reality of things, but we aren't there just to protect women. We are there to create safer dance spaces for everybody. And you can only do that if you understand all of the different aspects of it.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on this because this one thing that's really important about this to me personally, as a survivor and myself, as a man who's went through this. That's how I got into this in the first place, because when this happened to me in college, it's really difficult as a man, right? Like Lara said, because people think that you wanted it, you welcomed it. What kind of man would want something like that? So it's really difficult for men to have conversations and to even talk about things like that. So I always want to be very open that for men who've experienced this, like, you have a place, you can talk about this. Your story is important. It obviously does happen way more to women, and that is much more, that needs to be the focus, but it does happen to men too. And there has to be a place for men to come forward and talk about these things. Otherwise, things just get internalized and nothing moves forward. So very much important that it's men, women, and non-men, non-women, non-binary folks too.
I want to ask you this question, and it may be a very stupid question, but I want to hear from both of you all. I guess, what do you think happens if the dance community as a whole, if we kind of, ignore this issue, stick our heads in the sands? Is the obvious answer, it's just going to be a continuous, ever-going process? What happens if we kind of ignore this?
Yeah, I can go first. I think if we ignore this, the dance scene is going to continue to exist, but it's not going to be what personally, for example, I would like it to be. And people like me will end up leaving it. So already, we're lucky enough in London that we have so many events going on in so many different places. So you can definitely pick and choose where you go. And the feeling of safety and the feeling that there is somebody responsible in charge, the feeling that if it isn't overwhelmingly creepy, and that if there are inappropriate things happening, something is going to be done about it, is definitely something that I think about before attending or before going somewhere. So the events that I go to frequently are events where these things are clear. Well, to be fair, the main one I go to is an SDS member event. But so what I think would happen if we ignored it is that safer spaces would become less and less existent, that the dance scene will effectively see people who are there to dance irrespectively and happily with each other leave it because they feel uncomfortable, and it will effectively be left to those who are there for other reasons. So it will still exist. You will always have new dancers coming in. The question is who stays. That's my opinion.
I can give us some more thought. I would say yes, this has existed as long as there's been humans, there's been sexual harassment. As long as there's been dance, there's been sexual harassment. We are at a different point in time now because of social media and because the dance scene has become more connected. So I spend a lot of time in the Brazilian Zouk scene, for example, and it's as international as it gets. People know each other across country lines. People go to festivals pre-COVID, in many countries across the world, see the same people. So there's this expectation now that because the community is more interconnected, because we do have these social media avenues, that the problem is becoming more known. So dancers all across the world in all scenes are recognizing that this is an issue. More and more conversations are happening like this. So now there's a growing expectation that organizers need to do something about this. Teachers need to do something about this, where that kind of global expectation I don't think was there like it is today. And so there's a moment that the community has to reckon with, like, are we going to be a space that takes this seriously, or are we going to be a space that ignores it? And so it's a commentary on the partner dance scene as a whole, how we address this. So it's not just that the events will keep happening. It's I think that people on the inside and outside will look at the partner dance scene and say, this must not be a space where this is taken seriously. And that's a really strong condemnation of the people in this scene and what we purport ourselves to be, right? So it's more than just whether events happening. It's who are we as dancers? That's kind of what's on the line.
I definitely understand that. And I think also, I think if I was an event organizer, that would be terrible for business. So I think it benefits nobody for that to keep happening. Let me ask you both this real quick. What do you have any advice? Any advice for individuals, going forward? The next time they go to a social, the next time they go to a Congress festival, do you have any advice, anything they should do, anything they should look out for, anything they should be wary of, anything?
I guess one piece of advice that I have is that if first of all, keep a lookout for yourself and for others. Just be aware of your surroundings. And if something makes you feel uncomfortable, it probably means it's wrong. So at least talk about it with someone, with a close friend, with your dance teacher who you trust. But if something feels wrong and makes you feel uncomfortable, it probably is. So there's no harm having a conversation. And I think identifying a problem is always the first step to resolving it. So I guess this is where the journey starts, I would say.
Well, I'll add on to there. I would say if someone out there, is listening and wants to start taking this a little more seriously, it begins way before your next event. So just as a really small example, most of the socials that I've run in the past, if the expectation is that people will drive to them, right, and that there will be a dark parking lot there, we reserve like the closest 6 to 7 spaces to the front door for single women. So, right, if you are a single woman coming by yourself, you should park in these like 6, 7 spaces, right? Just as like making the parking lot safe, because it's common that things happen in a dark parking lot when people are walking by themselves. So if your favorite social is out in the middle of nowhere, huge parking lot, dark spaces, mention to the organizer, hey, why don't you set aside a few of these spaces for women coming by themselves? And that's a really tiny thing that can make a huge difference. And it's an example of how a community can start to address this even before something happens. Because what that also says to the community is that even by setting aside a few parking spaces, it says that we, the organizers, we're aware this happens. We're taking measures to prevent this from happening. And we are a place where if something does happen, you know that we care because you can see these visible actions that we're taking. So it's not just be aware of your situation, because of course that is important, but raising the expectations for what it means to be a member of the community. I think that would be my advice.
And of course, consider joining SDS, because then you won't start from scratch and you just be able to start from a bank of material that's already available.
Okay. I definitely understand that. I definitely do. I think at this point, I really want to thank you both for taking time out today to talk to me and spread this message that you both have.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Tell me this real quick. Tell me this. How can people get in contact with you? How can they reach out to you?
So the best way to reach out. So first of all, in order to learn a bit about Safer Dance Spaces before registering interest, I guess, is on social media. So you can look for Safer Dance Spaces on Facebook or Instagram. And there's quite a lot on there. Our Facebook page has some information about our features and benefits in terms of an initiative. The SDS members charter is up there, so you know what our members have signed up to, which is I guess quite key. We also have some testimonial videos up, and there'll be more coming as well, where you can hear some feedback from our members, effectively why they joined, why they think it's important, what benefited them the most, questions like this that have been answered, quite quickly. So these snippets can sort of give you a bit more of an idea of what we're about. And then, if you do want to register interest in joining, on every single one of these posts, there's a link to register interest, which is effectively just a form that you, a Google form that you fill out, and then we'll get your details and we'll get back in touch with you by email with all of the information to join. If you want to get in touch with specific queries, again, you can either on social media message the page, or you can email us at saferdancespaces@gmail.com. And we endeavor to respond within 24 hours, but if not, it'll be 48. But you'll hear back from us.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, and I definitely appreciate that. I want to hear from you both. I want to give you all, I guess, the last words before we close this episode. Anything you want to share, plug. I'll let you all have the last word before we close this episode.
I've spoken the most, so I'm going to be quick, and I'm going to let Jason just go ahead and share any thoughts that he hasn't had the chance to share yet. But I guess in terms of a closing statement, Safer Dance Spaces is an enabler. We are really there just for organizers, teachers, and dancers to to have a bit of somewhere to go to, a bit of a safety net, to ask questions, a bit of a community, to feel supported, so that all of our dance spaces are safer and braver. We are global. We aren't, we aren't there for a specific dance either. It's a very much open to all sort of initiative. And, we're there for you. So if you do have any feedback, do let us know.
I guess I would say my parting thought that this is such an important movement, not just for the dance scene. It is really important for the dance scene, but for society at large. This is an issue that happens all across society, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. Some small thing about me, in my day job, I'm actually running for office in the United States for this specific issue. It's something that's really important to me beyond the dance scene, but in public life, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, this is something that you face constantly. And it's something that we should raise our expectations for people to talk about, no matter where you are in life, no matter where you are in society. So I'm so grateful for Lara and the team at Safer Dance Spaces for being the lead and for being an ally in this. And we need more people. So whether or not you're a dancer, wherever you are in life, get involved. This is really important stuff.
Hey, definitely. I definitely understand that. I want to thank you both, Lara and Jason, so much, like I said earlier, for taking time actually to talk to me. I really do appreciate that.
Thank you for having us, Terence. I mean, as Jason said, having a place to talk about this is key. It's not a light issue. It's not a fun topic, but it is so very crucial. So thanks for having us.
Of course. I think this will do it for this episode of the 2 to 3 podcast. Thank you so much.